Hey guys, tonight we walk a winding path into fog, into silence, and into a swordmaster's mind so sharp it could split not just armor, but ego. No, you probably won't survive the first 10 minutes of Musashi's training routine, but tonight you don't have to. You just have to listen, breathe, and let your thoughts slow to the rhythm of footsteps on mountain soil. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're joining from somewhere far away, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where our sleepy journeys reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the narrow trail, feet brushing dewdrop-heavy grass. The mountain rises slowly ahead, quiet, enormous, unmoved. There's mist curling around the rocks like it's trying to remember how to be cloud again. The only sound is your breath and the occasional snap of a twig. You tighten the rough cloth around your shoulders and keep walking. Ahead, there's a boy, lone, thin frame-wide stance, a sword longer than you'd think a teenager could carry strapped to his back. He isn't walking like a traveler. He's walking like the road belongs to him. Barefoot because boots are for people who care what's underfoot. His name is Shinmen Takezo, but you'll know him soon as Miyamoto Musashi. He doesn't see you, or maybe he does, but he doesn't stop. You follow instinctively, unsure whether you're a ghost to him or he's one to you. Either way, you're learning already. The trail climbs and your legs begin to ache. The boy doesn't slow. He moves like someone who's already buried the idea of comfort. There's no pack, no food, just the sword and a stillness that seems to follow him like a second shadow. Eventually he stops. At a clearing near the ridge, he kneels beside a stone, not for rest, but for form. The sword comes out slowly, quietly, like it doesn't want to disturb the trees. He places it beside him, not with reverence, but with familiarity, like it's not a weapon, just an extension of breath. And he begins to move, not in flourishes, not with drama, but with a kind of precision that makes the air seem cooperative. Each motion is a sentence in a language you don't know yet, but your body understands. You realize he's not practicing swordsmanship. He's practicing control, not of the blade, of himself. Because that's the first lesson of Musashi, not how to fight, but how to walk alone without being lost. How to move toward something without demanding that it get out of your way. He isn't rushing to a duel. He's not seeking a master. He's training on a mountain where no one's watching, not for glory, but because the mountain is quiet enough to reflect his own noise back at him. That quiet stings, especially if you're used to performing. Musashi's early life was anything but peaceful. Historians still argue whether he was born in 1584 or 1582, but they agree on this. He was chaos before he was clarity, orphaned, violent, raw. By age 13, he'd already killed a grown man in a duel. Most would have stopped there, put the sword down, called themselves legendary. But not him, because the win didn't bring peace. It brought questions. And that's what you're watching now, not answers. Questions in motion. You sit on a stone and listen to the wind push the fog into shapes. He doesn't speak. He doesn't notice you. Or maybe he knows you'll only hear him if he stays silent. He finishes a final movement, a draw, a pivot, a strike so quiet the trees seem to pause. Then he stands still, and the moment stretches. You realize this is the real lesson. It isn't the swing, it's the stillness after. You look down at your own hands. They're not holding anything, not a sword, not a truth, but they tremble all the same, because what you've just seen isn't mastery of others. It's the first spark of someone mastering himself. The next morning comes quietly sliding across the sky like a blade across silk. You wake in the same spot you fell asleep in, that high mountain clearing the fog, now replaced by a pale, washed-out sky and the scent of pine warmed by light. Musashi is already gone. You follow his footprints, bare, wide-toed, pressed deep into the damp earth. They lead down the trail across a wooden footbridge, past the chirp of unseen sparrows, and into the flatlands below. And soon you find him again, standing in a field. Across from him, another boy, older, broader, louder. This is Musashi's first public duel, and this one won't end with applause. You step back into the tall grass and watch. The older boy struts and boasts, flanked by friends holding wooden staves. One of them passes him a short blade, worn but serviceable. He twirls it and points at Musashi like this is theater. Musashi doesn't speak. He doesn't bow. He steps forward fast. The fight ends before it starts. One blow, one scream. The other boy is on the ground, clutching his face, blood bright as poppies in the grass. And just like that, it's over. There's no celebration, no nods of respect, no honor. The crowd disperses like smoke, and Musashi's sword still in hand just stands there. He doesn't look proud. He looks unsettled. This was a victory, technically, but it wasn't clean. It wasn't real. And somewhere inside you see it hit him. Strength without restraint is just noise. He walks away before anyone speaks. You follow a few paces behind, wondering what it means to win and whether it's worth it if it leaves you emptier than before. That night, you find him by a stream, washing his blade. The moon reflects off the water, and he stares into it like it owes him an explanation. You sit beside him. He doesn't acknowledge you, but you know he knows. You fought well, you offer. He doesn't respond, because well is too small a word, because there's a difference between survival and mastery, and he's beginning to feel it. Historians still argue whether Musashi ever lost a duel. Some say he fought over 60 men and never once tasted defeat. But victories like today, they don't feel like wins. They feel like splinters in the soul. You look at his hands, not shaking, but not at peace either. That's when it hits you. The path to mastery isn't paved with trophies. It's lined with mirrors, and right now Musashi is staring into one that looks suspiciously like a river. He cleans the blade slowly, then sets it aside, and pulls out a stick and begins drawing in the sand. Circles, lines, a figure, a pathway. He's rewriting the duel, replaying the angles, reimagining how it might have ended if it needed to end at all. You watch, quietly. The sand absorbs it all, like it knows this is where the real battle is happening. Not in the field, but in the space between regret and resolve, between pain and precision, between instinct and intention. He finishes the last line and erases it with his palm. Then he lies back in the grass and closes his eyes. And for the first time you realize learning how to win is easy. Learning how to feel about it. That's where the real work begins. It's raining now. Not a storm, not even a proper downpour. Just the kind of persistent, whispering rain that makes the whole world feel like it's being softly erased. You follow Musashi along a forest trail, the leaves above you catching droplets and passing them down like secrets. The dirt underfoot has turned slick, your footing unsure. His isn't. He walks with his head level, his sword wrapped in cloth, and slung across his back, his breath slow and even. He's heading toward a monastery, not to pray, not to fight, to listen. You arrive together though no one greets you. There's no bell, no grand gate, just a monk sweeping a stone courtyard in the rain like that's the most important task in the world. You want to ask why, but Musashi doesn't. He just sets his sword down and begins to sweep alongside him. For hours, no words. Just bristle dragging over wet stone, the rhythm soft and patient. This is his first teacher of stillness, and it's a man who hasn't even made eye contact. Later in the meditation hall, Musashi sits kneeling beside a row of other monks. The candlelight flickers, the incense curls. No one moves, no one blinks. Even the crickets outside seem to have agreed to hush. You kneel too badly. Your knees creak, your spine rebels. But you try, because something in this silence feels sharper than any blade you've seen drawn. And Musashi, he's perfectly still, like he's been practicing this pose since before he was born. Time stretches. Your thoughts do laps in your head like squirrels on espresso. But slowly, slowly, they soften until you're not fighting them. You're just watching. That's what Musashi is learning now, the art of the pause, the discipline of not reacting, of waiting until a movement is necessary. Historians still argue whether Musashi ever formally studied Zen Buddhism or just absorbed it through osmosis like tea soaking into wood. But either way, the influence is there, not in chance, but in choices. One day during chores, a visiting warrior boasts in the courtyard, laughs loudly, claps loudly, challenges one of the monks to a duel. Musashi watches. No one moves. The challenger becomes more aggressive. "No one here dares face me," he barks. Musashi stands, but not to fight. He picks up a bucket and walks away to gather water. The challenger is confused, then offended. Musashi returns. The monk hands him another bucket. They resume watering the moss. Eventually, the visitor leaves, angry, but alone. You turn to Musashi. "Why didn't you fight?" He shrugs, because he didn't really want to fight. You blink. He was shouting, threatening. He wanted attention, Musashi replies. He can win that from himself. And he goes back to watering. That's the lesson. Sometimes the sharpest sword is in action, not because you're afraid, but because you've mastered the difference between response and reaction. It's easier to swing a sword than to let it stay sheathed. But that's why mastery is rare. You sit again under the eaves, watching Musashi move like water across stone, quiet, deliberate, patient. And you begin to wonder what parts of your life would change if you didn't flinch at every provocation, if you let the storm pass through you, if you learned the discipline of waiting. Musashi ties the buckets up, wipes the sweat from his brow, and bows to the monk beside him. The monk says nothing, just keeps sweeping, and Musashi smiles just barely. Because sometimes stillness is the clearest strike of all. Dot. The sun returns without ceremony, just a subtle gold on the moss, a new warmth in the breeze. The rain has gone and the world feels rinsed, clean, lighter. You walk beside Musashi as he leaves the monastery, his sandals damp his steps, soundless. There's no farewell, no bow, just forward motion. The trail leads to a village market where colors return in a rush, teal robes, russet cloaks, saffron banners fluttering between thatched stalls. You haven't seen this much sound in days. It's loud, overripe, full of chickens and gossip and distractions. And in the center of it, a man shouting challenges. He wears lacquered armor, polished to gleam like mirrors. His sword hilt is gold-plated. He boasts of victories in distant provinces. He wants a duel. No, he wants an audience. Musashi walks past him. The man blocks his path. "You there, Ronin, face me." Musashi doesn't stop. The man draws his sword. The crowd gasps. Children freeze mid-skip. Merchants lean out of stalls. Musashi turns slowly, and then he does nothing. No stance, no hand on hilt, no insult. He just looks, and the man freezes. Something about that stare, that silence, like being measured by the sea, and suddenly the challenge feels exposed. The man blinks, lowers his sword, mumbles something about a better time, and vanishes into the market crowd armor, clinking a little too fast. You exhale, so does everyone else. Musashi keeps walking. "What just happened?" you whisper, catching up. He glances at you. He expected reaction, not observation. That's it. That's the whole duel. A lesson in the power of not flinching. In the book of 5 rings, still years from being written, Musashi will eventually note, perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. And what you just witnessed, that was invisible warfare. No blade, but plenty of weight. Historians still argue whether Musashi mastered strategy through books, battles, or simply relentless introspection. But in this moment you realize his greatest victories aren't fought. They're disarmed. You pass a vendor selling fish wrapped in bamboo leaves. Another sharpens knives with a foot-powered whetstone. The world resumes, but something inside you has shifted. Because now you start to notice the way people telegraph themselves. The flicker before anger, the pause before a boast, the hunger behind a smile. And you wonder how many of your own reactions are just rehearsals. What would happen if you broke script? If you stopped rising to every prod? If you let your stillness speak louder than your defense? Later, Musashi sits by a well-sipping ladle-drawn water. He offers you some. It tastes of minerals and morning. He says you win when you don't need to prove anything. You nod, but you still want to ask something. What if they push? He turns the ladle slowly. Then they'll fall on their own momentum. That's the art of not reacting, of letting pride trip itself. You sit beside him, listening to birds compete for sky space, and think maybe you've been reacting your whole life. And maybe now you don't have to dot the next morning begins in silence, not because no one's awake, but because the world seems to agree that speaking too soon might break something important. You wake beside a stream where Musashi is already tracing lines in the sand with a long twig. Not drawing, not doodling, mapping. You inch closer. It's a battlefield, but no soldiers, just movement. Lines, arrows, half circles, small stone markers for terrain, a few leaf fragments for landmarks. Musashi's fingers move slowly, adjusting the shapes. Is it a plan, you ask? He nods. For your next duel. He nods again. You sit across from him and stare at the sand. It looks more like a painting than a strategy. It's beautiful, you murmur. He shrugs. It'll be gone in an hour. That's when it hits you. He's not just planning a fight. He's thinking in impermanence. He wipes the field clean and starts again, this time faster. New lines, different angles. He does this 3 more times. Each version simpler. Sharper, quieter. That's the principle. The first move happens before you ever step on the field. It's in the mind, in the clarity of commitment. You think of all the times you've jumped into a problem hoping to figure it out midair. Musashi doesn't leap. He builds the landing before he takes the step. Later, you see him sparring with a friend, an older warrior who doesn't hold back. Their wooden swords crack with speed. The older man laughs, full of force. Musashi deflects everything without smiling. He's not reacting. He's already been here, in his mind, dozens of times. When the duel ends, the older man bows, panting. You always see it before I move, he says. Musashi replies, I move before I'm seen. It's not arrogance. It's preparedness. Historians still argue whether Musashi's brilliance was instinct or intellect. But what you just seen, it's neither. It's foresight, as muscle memory. You return to the stream that evening. The sand is smooth again. The wind took the last battlefield away. But the clarity, it stayed. Musashi sits beside you, hands resting on his knees, breathing slow. You don't win by swinging, he says. You wait. He continues, you win by knowing where you won't have to. And suddenly every problem in your life feels different. Not smaller, but more solvable. Because maybe it's not about reacting faster. Maybe it's about not needing to react at all. You look out over the still water, and for the first time your thoughts are quiet enough to hear the current dot. The road is quieter now, not because there's less to hear, but because you've finally started listening without needing noise. You walk beside Musashi through a thicket of trees so tall they blot out half the sky. Dappled light flickers across the path like candle flames on old wood. Everything here feels older than explanation. You arrive at a fork in the trail. One path winds toward a formal school, its banners crisp, its gates precise. The other path, untamed, overgrown, unlabeled. Musashi doesn't hesitate. He walks toward the wild path. You hesitate. Don't you want a teacher, you ask. I already have one, he says. Who? And he gestures to the path, to the wind, to his own chest. Himself. Welcome to the no-school school. It's not that Musashi didn't study with others. He did, briefly, but he always left. Not in rebellion, but in recognition. Every school had rules, forms, dogma. Musashi wanted truth, not technique. And so he became his own master. You follow him into that forested path, weaving through branches and nettles, dodging cobwebs. It's slower going, but it feels real, like the struggle is part of the teaching. Musashi pauses beside a fallen log, ties a cloth around his eyes, and begins swinging his wooden sword blind. Not wildly, not dangerously, but deliberately. Each swing a question, each breath an answer. Historians still debate whether Musashi developed his own style, Naten Ichi Ryu, or Two Heavens One style from intuition or necessity. What's clear is this: no one else taught him how to fight with two swords. He invented it by watching the world By watching himself, by not waiting for permission. You sit nearby as he drills one-handed stances, switching grip mid-motion, dancing between trees like a shadow with purpose. The second sword, a shorter one, rests on his hip untouched. Then, without warning, he draws both and moves like flowing ink across a blank scroll. You've never seen anything like it. 2 blades, 1 body, no waste, no extra, just what is needed. Later by the fire, you ask him why he doesn't teach more students. He says because they want shortcuts. I only teach roads. You stare at the flames, thinking of every time you waited for someone to hand you a map. And Musashi, he's building his own compass, not from pride, from freedom. Because once you realize the world isn't going to carve your path for you, you start carving with your own hands. And that's when the path becomes yours, even if no one else understands it. Especially then. You fall asleep beside the fire, the hum of insects in the background, his swords resting quietly against a rock. And you dream not of battle, but of walking boldly into the unknown with nothing but your breath and your blade and your belief that you are enough. The forest fades behind you, and in its place, a broad open plain kissed by moonlight. You and Musashi arrive just before dawn, your breath visible in the cold. The duel will take place here, no stage, no crowd, just grass and wind, and a rising sun that doesn't seem interested in taking sides. Your feet crunch softly across the ground. Musashi's don't. His opponent waits in the distance, older, heavier, confident in the way a man becomes when he's never been asked a real question. He's armed with a long blade and a smug smile. He doesn't see it yet, but this won't be a duel. This will be a revelation. Musashi's hands are empty, no armor, no ceremony, just a short sword in one hand, a longer one resting at his side. His expression is still like water in a temple bowl. You sit at the edge of the plain, barely breathing. The 2 warriors step forward. No bow, no salute, and then movement. But not like you expect. Musashi isn't rushing. He's waiting. The older man swings, fast, loud, sweeping arcs meant to impress, not land. Musashi steps just once, half a pace, and then the first sword speaks. It taps the opponent's wrist. A shock runs through the air like lightning held its breath. The second sword moves next, a flick across the knee, not to injure, but to interrupt. And just like that, the duel is over. The older man backs away, confused. There is no blood, no fall. But something inside him has been displaced, unseated, unwritten, because he didn't lose to technique. He lost to timing, to rhythm, to a man who moved only when it mattered. You blink. The fight lasted seconds. Musashi wipes his blades, bows slightly, and walks back to the fire like he just finished tying his shoes. You catch up with him as the sky starts to blush. How did you know when to strike? He hands you a stone. Drop this in the stream, he says. You do. It sinks, ripples. Now do it again tomorrow, he adds. The ripples won't be the same, but the stone always sinks. You stare at the stream. You start to get it. He wasn't reacting. He was reading the ripples, anticipating not just the next move, but the energy behind it. Historians still argue whether Musashi's genius came from observation or instinct, but neither word feels big enough now. Because this wasn't about swordsmanship, this was about alignment, knowing exactly where and when your presence shifts the world. and shifting it without force, you return to camp. Musashi sits beneath a tree slicing vegetables with the same blade that disarmed a man moments ago. You sit beside him, not to speak, but to learn what it means to live with that much clarity, to only move when movement is necessary, to let the rest days pass, maybe weeks. The road beneath your feet becomes dust, then stone, then nothing at all. The horizon stretches wide and empty, and still Musashi walks. But he's not hunting duels now. He's disappearing. You follow him into the mouth of a cave carved into a mountainside, a place where silence lives naturally, not as an absence, but as a resident. The light fades behind you as you go deeper. He carries no torch, just a rolled scroll, a cup, a blade. This is where he retreats from the world, to test the hardest opponent he's ever known himself. You settle near the cave wall, watching as he lights a small fire and unpacks only what he needs. No bedding, no comforts, just ink, brush, rice water, and the weight of solitude. He doesn't eat much, some days not at all. You see him fast for 3, then 4 days. His body thins, his movements slow, but his eyes, they sharpen. He begins to write. Not poetry, not stories, doctrine. The words come not from hunger, but through it. Clarity rising through fatigue, like spring water through stone. He's composing what will later be called the Book of 5 Rings. But to him, it's not a book. It's a mirror. Each line carved from stillness. Each stroke of the brush a question answered only by deeper silence. You peek at a page. Respect the gods and Buddhas, but do not rely on them. You sit back, breath caught in your throat, because what kind of discipline does it take to seek guidance from within instead of waiting for lightning bolts or burning bushes? Musashi is finding what he needs inside the cave, inside himself. Historians still argue whether he fasted here for strategy or purification, whether the cave was a hideout, a haven, or just the only place quiet enough to hear his own heartbeat. But one thing is clear. The man who once trained with swords now trains with absence. No enemies, no noise, no applause. Just him. The writing continues. One line reads, "In all things the way is in training." You let that settle, because you realize you're not always training the skill. Sometimes you're training the self that holds the skill. Later, he sets the scroll down and begins slow, deliberate movements. A kata with no audience, a dance of presence. Every gesture feels like a bow to the air itself. You feel your own breathing start to match the rhythm, not because he told you to, but because alignment is contagious. That night, he sharpens his sword in the dark. But you notice something. He doesn't check the edge. He checks the reflection of the fire, of himself, maybe both. And you realize Musashi isn't retreating from the world. He's making sure that when he re-enters it, he doesn't bring the noise back with him. He's not emptying himself. He's refining, distilling, boiling off every excuse, distraction, and hesitation until only purpose remains. You lie back on the cool cave floor, the crackle of fire beside you, and then think, what would happen if you spent even one day alone with your own thoughts? No phone, no screen, no one watching. Would you sharpen or shatter? Musashi turns one last page and blows out the candle. Darkness swells. But there is no fear here, because where most people run from silence, Musashi trains in it. Morning in the cave is quieter the night. The fire has died. The ashes are cool. A single beam of light cuts through a crack in the stone, landing on Musashi's hand as he paints with slow, steady strokes. Not a battlefield, not a sword, but a bird, wings wide, caught mid-flight. You blink. You're painting. He doesn't look up. Yes, you lean in. The bird is rendered with just a few brushstrokes, but it moves. It moves. The wings curl slightly with the wind. The eyes are alive. It's beautiful, you whisper. It's practice, he replies. For war. No, he says. For seeing? You sit back and watch as he switches to another scroll. This one already has 3 fish drawn on it. He paints a 4th. No outline, just motion. He's not trying to create control. He's trying to release it through control. Every line he paints is a meditation on restraint. And you realize this is the same man who once shattered opponents in one stroke, but now he's using a brush to master the one thing the sword could not, his own presence. Musashi sets the scroll down and breathes. The art isn't for display. It's for sharpening perception. Historians still argue whether Musashi became a true artist or just used painting as a metaphor. But this morning there is no debate, because when someone draws like this, they're not trying to be an artist. They're trying to stop needing labels. You ask, how does painting help you fight? He dips his brush again. Fighting is painting with a shorter stroke. You laugh gently. You always speak in riddles. He looks at you, only if you're still asking for answers. You fall silent because he's right. The scroll dries in the sun. The bird's wings catch the light. The whole cave seems to inhale and exhale with it. And for the first time, you understand. Musashi isn't mastering different disciplines. He's practicing one awareness in different forms. When he paints like a swordsman. When he fights like a painter. When he walks like the wind, neither rushing nor stopping. Later that day, he lets you try. You hold the brush, trembling. You try to draw the same bird. It looks like a panicked leaf. Musashi doesn't laugh. He nods. You held your breath. You hadn't even noticed. Next time, he says, breathe with a stroke. You try again. It's still clumsy, but it flows. And somehow, you feel calmer, less afraid of being wrong, because suddenly, mastery doesn't feel like perfection. It feels like presence. And you realize what Musashi's been doing all along, teaching himself to see without needing to judge, to move without needing to justify, to act without needing to prove, to be with clarity. You hang your scroll beside his. One looks like a bird. One looks like an attempt. But both tonight look like truth. The morning you leave the cave, the air carries that soft weight of something ending, but also something beginning. Musashi packs nothing, not even the scrolls. He leaves them rolled and resting on a shelf, carved from stone like they were never his to begin with. You walk behind him in silence as the trail winds back into sunlight. The mountain rolls into forest. The forest yields to meadow. And ahead, a wide, flat field of damp grass and waiting air. Someone stands there. A rival. Old lean eyes like frost-bitten steel. No crowd. No banners. Just 2 men. 2 blades. And the soft hush of a wind that seems to understand what's about to happen. You sit at the edge, knees folded under you. This is Musashi's final duel. Not the last in his life, perhaps, but the one where you will learn the most. They bow, but it's not politeness. It's presence recognizing presence. Then, nothing, neither moves. 10 seconds, 20, a minute. It feels like eternity, holding its breath. And then, in one blink, they move. You don't see the first strike. You feel it, like a bell rung in your bones. The clash lasts 3 seconds, maybe 4. The rival stumbles back, not wounded, but changed. His sword hand is open, his eyes wide. Musashi lowers his blade, not in victory, in completion. There is no cheer, no grin, no need, because this wasn't about defeating a man. It was about moving only when the move is undeniable. The rival nods, steps back, sheathes his blade, and then they bow again, this time with peace. You breathe out, didn't realize you'd been holding it. Musashi sits in the grass, not tired, just grounded. You walk to him slowly. You didn't hit him, you say. He nods. I didn't have to, but you could have. He looks at the horizon. Power is knowing when not to use it. Historians still debate whether Musashi's last duels were ever fought. Some believe he faded from the sword entirely in his final years. But the truth is here now, and it doesn't matter what's written in records. Because Musashi just demonstrated the final mastery of the moment. He no longer needs to win, to prove anything. He no longer needs the sword to cut. The cut happens in intention. The rival walks away. So does Musashi, not ahead of you. Beside you, the road continues through golden grass, and as you walk together, you realize something. He's not your guide anymore. He never was. He was your mirror all along. The strength you saw yours, the stillness yours, the timing yours to shape. You don't speak. There's no final quote, no dramatic gesture, only walking. And the whisper of a field once turned battlefield, now returned to peace. Dot. The road winds downward toward a coastal village where the sea exhales with the rhythm of breath. You hear waves before you see them, slow old waves that have known the edge of the world longer than any human has stood with a blade. Musashi walks slower now, not because he is tired, but because there's nothing to chase. He carries a bundle of parchment. The scrolls he began in the cave have followed him. Some are finished, some are fragments. All are truth, not as law, but as lived reflection. You arrive at a quiet temple near the cliffs. Inside he kneels and begins to write again. You kneel beside him, close enough to read the title he inscribes in dark, careful strokes. Go Rin no Sho, the Book of 5 Rings. He writes as the tide rises. 5 chapters, earth, water, fire, wind, void, each one less about swordplay, more about awareness. He doesn't instruct, he reveals. Perceive the enemy's intention as if it were your own. Do not collect weapons. Let your spirit be the weapon. Control without forcing. Move with the rhythm of necessity. These are not tactics. They are mirrors. You see yourself in the lines. In the moments you've reacted out of fear. In the times you swung wildly at problems instead of observing them into silence. Musashi pauses mid-sentence. He closes his eyes, then opens them again, clearer. He continues writing, not to be read, but to be remembered by someone someday who will need more than a technique, who will need a philosophy. Outside the sea darkens. Wind brushes through the trees, and you understand now this isn't about knowing what to do. It's about knowing how to be in stillness, in fire, in change, in truth. Historians still argue whether Musashi completed the book before his death, or whether parts were lost to time. But here now, that debate feels small, because what he's writing isn't a manual. It's a meditation, a final gift, not of domination, but of integration. He places the final period, rolls the scroll, ties it with a cord, and lets it rest. You sit beside him in the candlelight. You don't ask what's next, because the words have already arrived. And some teachings speak loudest when they're done being said. The seasons change. Leaves crisp and fall. The air smells different now, older, quieter. Musashi moves less, speaks less, but nothing about him feels diminished. If anything, he's more present than ever. You live with him in a modest house near the edge of a forest. No guards, no disciples. Just wind in the eaves and tea that tastes faintly of pine. He no longer trains with the sword, because he no longer needs it. You watch him every morning as he sits by the same window, eyes half closed, watching the shadows shift across the floor. There's no ritual, no chant, just breath, just being. You ask him once, "What now?" He doesn't answer right away. Then he says, "Now I master nothing." You laugh, not unkindly, but you've mastered everything. He shakes his head. That was the illusion. Mastery is not the end. It's what begins when ambition leaves. You sit with that. Let it settle in your chest like slow embers. Musashi walks to his garden, pulls a few weeds, brushes dirt from his hands. No students, no duels, just daily presence. He sharpens his mind on ordinary things. Cooking rice, sweeping the floor, sketching birds without ever looking at the page. Once you catch him meditating with his sword across his knees, not drawn, not lifted, just there, a reminder that everything he once pursued, skill, reputation, control, now rests quiet beneath the surface. Historians still speculate whether Musashi died with regrets, whether he feared the void. But here now, watching him place a stone in his garden like it matters, you know better. He's not afraid of the void. He is the void. And it isn't empty. It's clear. It's peace with everything unspoken, unresolved, unfinished. One afternoon, as clouds gather over the hill, he says, "When the sword is no longer needed, the hand becomes light." You nod, unsure if you fully understand, but something inside you believes it anyway. Because Musashi isn't transmitting knowledge anymore. He's transmitting being. Through glances, through gestures, through quiet that doesn't demand anything from the world. You once thought mastery was a peak, a conquest. But here at the end of the path, you learn mastery is not the top of the mountain. It's becoming the mountain itself, still, unshaken, rooted deep, and yet open to sky dot. The final day arrives like all others, without warning, without ceremony. The sun rises soft and warm, stretching golden fingers across the floorboards. Musashi is already seated back, straight eyes closed. He hasn't spoken all morning. You sit across from him, no questions, no instructions, just silence shared like tea. Outside, the wind stirs the trees. Inside, the stillness deepens. Musashi opens his eyes. They're clear, not dim with age, not distant with fear, but open, present. He smiles just barely and says, "Now it is enough." You don't understand at first. Then you do. He reaches for his sword slowly, reverently, and places it across his lap. But he doesn't grip it. He rests his hands atop it, like you might rest your palms on a book you've read 1,000 times. There's no fight left, no need for tension. The blade is no longer a tool. It's a symbol of a life fully faced, a self fully known. The fire crackles low beside you. Musashi closes his eyes again, not in meditation, in peace. His breath slows not from weakness, but from surrender, a final conscious breath, and then stillness. True, full, irreversible stillness, but not empty, whole. You sit for hours unmoving, not because you're frozen in grief, but because something sacred has happened, and rushing would only steal from it. Outside, the clouds drift lazily across the sky. A crane passes overhead. Somewhere, a bamboo chime sings to no one. You rise slowly, fold your legs beneath you, and bow deeply, not to a master, but to a man who became his own mountain and showed you how to do the same. You step outside into the light. The world hasn't changed, and yet everything is different. You walk with steadier breath, with clearer eyes. You don't flinch at passing noise. You don't search for instruction, because Musashi's final teaching wasn't written in ink. It was lived in silence, and now it's yours to carry, not to protect, but to embody. You keep walking toward nothing, toward everything, because you finally understand you are no longer the student. You are the sword. You are the brush. You are the stillness between strikes. You are the one who knows. Master yourself, and you will master your life. Thank you for watching my video. I wish you and your loved ones always happy and successful in work, as well as in your current life.